Welcome to the Beyond the Lines podcast. We're in a world with so much hate, so much tension. We want to learn how to love beyond the lines. We all have these lines in the sand where we don't want to go past this line, where we can't love this person past this line, where that person is over there and we can't touch them at all. And that's what we want to talk about and the things that we want to conversate about. So thank you for joining us. My name is Pastor DJ Hayward. This is Jonathan Miller on my right, and the wonderful and the awesome Diana Oestreich on my left. And we're going to have a fun conversation today. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. I read your book, which is right here, Waging Peace. And man, I was really challenged by how you took this posture that you're going to love people who are different than you, that you didn't understand, and you really had to walk through some really hard things. And so I want to start there. Let's talk about some of the things that you had to rectify or come through in your life to kind of get to the place where you are today.
That is such a good question. I have like 6 different places I could start.
Yeah.
But just to give you a little bit, because I think that oftentimes we just need to acknowledge where we're located in our culture and in our world. And so my culture was a really small rural town of 8,000 people in Minnesota. I went to a cute little country Baptist church, about 50 people. And that's really where I learned to love God. And I also learned that the world is pretty black and white. So, you know, if people didn't vote like us, then they were obviously wrong. And if people worship down the street in a different building than us, then, you know, they weren't doing it the right way. And if people didn't baptize the way we did, then... So I look back now and I really learned to love God, and I really love the people who taught me a lot about faith. And as I've gotten older, I realized that I was given a black and white view of the world that was pretty exclusive. And that made it really hard for me to see other people's humanity. And it made it really easy for me to disconnect God's concern for people who voted differently or were or like had a different kind of faith or just like lived across town. So I could just really disconnect myself from God's love and concern for how they're doing, if violence is happening against them. And so all of that really changed when I was deployed to the Iraq War at 23 years old. So you guys look very young to me. And so at 23, I thought I was an adult. Like, I knew what I knew. You know, like my perspectives were just really the truest true there was, really, because I had been handed these. Oh, and I should tell you that I was a 3rd-generation Army veteran. Yeah. So my mom and my dad served in the military. My uncles, my cousins, my grandpas, just like our family tree was a little bit of an American flagpole. It was just part of our culture.
Yeah.
So I had joined the military to pay for college when I was 17. So by the time I was pretty much done with my 6 years of enlistment, and that's when the U.S. started the preemptive strike, where we didn't declare war in Iraq. We just preemptively mobilized like 100,000 troops overnight. And my little National Guard unit was one of those. And so I found myself thrown into a war at 23 when I thought I was an adult, you know, and now I look back at it, I'm like, baby, like I was just a baby. But I was thrown into a war overnight, and I was a combat medic, so I had responsibilities to keep my 100 soldiers alive in my company. So one of the first things we did when we got there, we were going to convoy into enemy territory. And the night before we were getting our last safety briefing. And at the very end of the talk, the sergeant said, I hope you understand that one of the tactics of the enemy is that they push little Iraqi children in front of American trucks in order to slow down or stop the convoy, and then they ambush the soldiers at the rear. He said, I hope you understand your duty to keep the convoy rolling at all costs tomorrow. If you can't do your duty, and if you can't keep the convoy rolling, stand up now and identify yourself. And I remember just sitting there and like what he said just like was suspended in the air. Like I understood it, but I couldn't put it together. You know, like I couldn't imagine running over a child. And at the same time, I really believe that soldiers made sacrifices. And really the place that I grew up taught me that if I was serving the country, America, then it was like I was serving God. And so if I took a life for my country, it was ultimately taking a life for God. So I had this, like, so I walked out of the tent and, you know, he said dismiss, so I didn't really have to decide, like, what am I going to do? Am I going to stand up and say, I can't do this, and be branded a traitor and a coward? Or am I going to go along with this? And so before I had to make a decision, just dismiss, and we all left. But that was the first time that in my life that I had a viewpoint, I had a truth that I was actually having to look at who was at the other end of this belief I had. And I had to really think about that, because it was going to happen tomorrow. So I had like 8 hours to make a decision that I knew would change me forever. Like I knew there was no going back from this. But this is like the very first time that I really felt like I was wrestling with my own beliefs, you know, because this was fine, but inside, like, something was pushing back. And so I just laid on my cot and did, like, the most pitiful prayer on the planet, where I just remember laying there with tears, kind of silent, because, you know, there's other people in the tent. And I remember just saying, like, oh, God, help me. And then, like, I just, out of nowhere, really felt like I heard, like, God's voice come at me like a racquetball, where it just pings back at you. And I just heard, Diana, I love them too.
Wow. How did that shake you?
Well, in a minute, I just felt like the tension melted. Like I just felt like there was this peace, because deep down I knew it was true. Like I had learned that, like, God is love, and I learned that Jesus calls us to love our enemies. So, like, there was this truth in it that I just was like, oh, like, that's true. But I was like, wait a second, God. I'm like, we believe in this, okay, God? But I felt like God was really standing in front of my own beliefs and asking me to do something different. So that was really the first time that I felt a tension between what my country was asking of me and what God was requiring.
And that's, man, that is I mean, you've already described it, but that's a hard decision to make anyways. I mean, when you're learning about the war going on and about the enemies, you're hearing about men with guns shooting at each other. You're not thinking, I'm going to go have to run over a child and make that decision. Like, that's not what you're told about war when you've never been a part of it. That's not the reality that you think is going on, is that that soldiers have to make a decision to take a child's life who has not made any decision about war. They just either been shoved into it, or they've been impressioned or something along those lines. It's like, wow, that and that was like pretty much the opening of your book too. It's like that decision that's there, and it's not something I ever thought about war. I don't know what I would choose, because I think the reason they're saying that, and you would agree with this, is because they don't want the guys at the back to all die, right? To be ambushed and die. That's a decision. It's like, okay, choose between the guys on your team or this child. How do you make that decision?
And quite an impossible choice.
It's impossible
to be put in. Whose life will you take, and whose life will you protect? And not in a theoretical check the box theology way, but I had to make that was the reality of it. And so I think that was like the first time that God was really helping me see the person I'd been told to see as my enemy, the person I'd been told to see as collateral damage, the person that I've been told to not count the cost of their life. Because when it comes to like my guy's life or your guy's life, there's people that we just ignore and don't count that their lives matter, that their lives are just as sacred, and that God is cradling their future, and he has just as many hopes for them, for mercy and forgiveness and redemption, as he's holding for me. And so I think that was like the beginning of this, like, this just shift of where all of a sudden I could see people, and God had told me that he loves them. So what do? Except for agree with the God who created every single person that like, yeah, I think he does actually love them. I think I don't love them, but I do think that God loves them. And so that just shifted my eyeballs, and it shifted my allegiance. It really did change things for me. And yet I was still a soldier in the middle of the war, and nothing, like I couldn't change where I was, and I couldn't change what was required of me. But the freedom that I feel like God gave me was that he gave me a way to show up in the middle of the impossible. And we don't get to choose what will happen to us. We don't get to choose what the circumstances, but our freedom as like life people is we get to choose if we will be on the side of life. And Jesus says, like, you can lose your life and not really lose. Like, there are bigger things. Like, I realized there was something more valuable to me than just staying alive. Like, I could stay alive and do some bad things.
Yeah.
But, like, there was this life that already started.
Yeah.
I feel like God was really changing. So I went to war, and I feel like God showed me the people who I had really discounted and seen as my enemy. And that really allowed me to, when I came back from war, to also recognize people that, we don't like to say we have enemies, but there are people that we do not care for and we do not see.
Right.
And if they have problems, well, I guess it's their problem to fix. And if their kids aren't doing well, that's on you. So it really allowed me to, like, my faith had really separated me from people in my community. And now God brought me to a war, and I could see who my enemy was there and decide that I could love instead of be fearful of them, that I could do that in my own community. And so that really has been the game changer. I feel like my faith was pretty self-serving and pretty self-promoting and pretty segregated from a lot of people. So I feel like going to war and becoming a peacemaker was really how God, in a way, like, gave me life, where I was just, like, staying alive. But I got this, like, life, and this life to this full that wasn't, I knew that even if I died the next day, I was going to be okay, because I knew how I was showing up, and I was going to show up with God's love first and sacrifice, and I would never lose with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really good. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's awesome. Diana, you're a mom. And you're an author. You're all over the place, and you wrote this wonderful book, Waging Peace. And we're not going to go too much into this. Is not a book review. So if you want to know what's inside the book, you have to get the book and read the book. It's absolutely incredible, well written. So thank you for putting your story down on paper so we can learn from. One of the things that I was reading it, I was challenged, but also, man, I was almost kind of worried for you, because there were some things that you were saying in there that I was like, wow, like some people may take that in the the wrong way. Like, for your example, your struggle with who do I pledge allegiance to, So can you talk about some of those things that that people can feel defensive over what you're kind of stating, and how do you kind of walk through with people, like, hey, here's what I'm trying to get at. Here's my heart behind what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I think it's such an important, because, as you know, we are in the age of criticism. And there's an Indigenous elder in my city, and last year on Memorial Day, he said this thing that was really profound. He said that we're in the age of quarrel. And quarreling is an old-timey word for fighting. And I was like, wow, we're in the age of quarrel. Like, people have their dukes up. Like, they're kind of, like, itching. They're itching to get into it with somebody. So like you said, DJ, there are things in my book that I know are really, they're really hard for people. But the reason that they're hard for people is that they create a tension of allegiance. And I know this because I feel it. Like, I live that tension even now. Like, nothing is easy, and I mean, there's pain in that. But I think the truest thing that I know from war is that us versus them is a false choice.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that is the healing, that is the hope, that is the way on. That you can disagree with people's politics, you can disagree with whatever you want to, but at the end of the day, God requires us to show up with our love. He doesn't require us to have agreement.
Yeah.
And so this idea that we're in two different camps, and if I, and I always tell people, I'm like, there's room at the table to be a patriot and a peacemaker.
Yeah.
But where like my culture and I grew up, like peacemakers were like a dirty word. They were people who didn't understand sacrifice. They didn't love America. And they just had bad character. Like you did not want to be called one. And so for me to sit here before you today and say like, God has called me to be a peacemaker. Like I know what that means. I know the cost of that. So I walk in one room and they know that I'm a combat veteran, and they offer me, thanks, or think, well, she deserves our respect. And then when I say I'm a peacemaker, all of a sudden, like I hear like all their goodwill come back, and they're like, bad, And I was like, but I'm the same person. Like God made me the same person that I am today, and I hold both those things. So I understand where people are coming from, and I also want someone to. I wish someone would have invited me along, not condemn me.
Yeah.
But just invited me along. And then I go in other rooms and I'm like, I'm a peacemaker. And they're like, yeah. And then I'm like, and a soldier. And they're like, baby killer. And so what I know to be true is this human instinct of self-protection and saying us versus them. If you're for them, then you can't sit at our table. I know that is such a superficial, like small way to love. And I think that God has given us such a bigger table to love. And yeah, it's going to be uncomfortable and your friends might not like you because it's easy to be intimidated by your group because your group says don't hang out with them or you don't belong here anymore.
Yeah.
And so in a lot of these places, I have been scared. There's one part where I talk about going to a memorial for the Pulse nightclub shooting, which that was the largest act of terrorism against the gay community in the U.S. that has ever happened. I believe over 50 people were killed that night.
Yeah.
And I remember going to the LGBT community had asked the community to come and mourn with them, and we showed up with my little kids. And what I really realized as I was sitting there listening to people's stories of not feeling safe, of like going to school and they had two moms and so they were getting beat up at school because they had two moms, and that these clubs were some of the only places that they felt safe, like physically safe. I just remember feeling this overwhelming, like, knowledge that I was more scared. Like, I wasn't as concerned about gay people feeling loved as I was afraid of showing up at this event, because I was afraid that my faith community would take my Jesus card away from me.
Wow.
Like, I was more scared of being judged and how my group would treat me than I cared that this group of people are hurting and that this violence is going to follow them. And that broke my heart because I saw, like, what was most important to me. How I was going to get treated and how I was going to be seen by my group. And that was putting myself first. And I really knew that I was supposed to love first.
Yeah.
That's what I was supposed to care for. I was supposed to mourn with those who were mourn. I'm supposed to be present. Like, that's who God is.
Yeah.
It doesn't require agreement to show up. And so it's just a little bit of truth telling with myself of there were places and people that I wasn't showing up for because I wasn't putting the right thing first.
And when you create like an us versus them mentality, or when you have that in your mind, like you don't ever have to walk towards anyone because they're supposed to be over there, they're supposed to not saying this, but like, they're getting what they deserve because they are on this wrong side of what I think God wants. And it's like, well, man, here's the deal. God has called us to love. And I think it's, for us in the church, it's really easy to think that Jesus, if he would come back today and walk the earth like he did all those years ago, that he will come into a church. And I don't think that will be the case. He may have some choice words for us in the church, but I think he will go to those who are mourning and those hurting, very much the same people that he went to when he came the first time. And I think we forget that we are supposed to be modeling that. And if us to model that, we have to go to places where it may be uncomfortable. And for you talk about this idea of you're wanting to love people, in their suffering and where they are. Like, the only way that we can do that is if we go to them. And I think it's easy, being a pastor, just to want people to come to us, to come inside the church building. And it's like, no, like, there's times in my life, in all of our lives, where we have to say, hey, I'm going to go over there. I'm ignorant to what is going on over there, but I just see that there's a need there. And how can Jesus use me? Only he knows. And I have to be open to that.
Yeah. And I think that it's easy for us to forget that Jesus actually has a bias towards folks who are homeless, who are hungry, who are poor. Like, he's actually saying these folks are being left out, and I want you to care for them first. And those people are still here today. And so, just talking about just my family just kind of blackmailed ourselves that we were going to show up. So no longer did we only show up for people who voted like us, worship like us, all these things. We were just like, ours was a yes that God had given us. Like, our faith was now a blank check of just presence. Didn't require agreement. We didn't have to know what was going on.
Yeah.
So once we started to do that, you realize how many folks who are in those positions, they're on the margins, they're seen as disposable, they're the problem. Then you show up in person and you're like, oh my gosh. Like this is who God is like pointing us towards. This is who like should be our first concern. And you start to get a little tell the truth on yourself. And so one of those truths was like, our faith talks a lot about like you should really notice people who are homeless, the unsheltered. And I was like, well, Diana, do you know a single person's name who's experiencing being unsheltered? And you can guess what the answer was. It's a big old no. And so I found there's a Dorothy Day House, which is a Catholic worker house that offers hospitality in my city for families that are experiencing homelessness. And I was like, okay. And so I showed up with my family with dinner one night, just so awkward, like just felt so stupid. But I knew that I didn't want to be a hearer of God's like love. I want to be a doer.
Wow.
And you can't love someone you don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I showed up, and it was the hardest thing to sit around a table and not be there because of a book club or because our kids go to school together or because we're at a ministry together. Like, literally just people hanging out who happen to be experiencing different things. So luckily my kids were there and they're good icebreakers. So when you're nervous, you have your kids.
That's very true.
But we sat, like, we've been doing dinner there for 2 years now. And now I know my neighbors' names and I know what it's, and I have their perspective. And I had just a poverty of perspective of like, what's it like to do life with 3 kids, not having your own home and not having a car and sharing a bedroom for a year.
Wow.
And I feel like that people couldn't feel loved if I didn't even show up. But the minute that you do show up, you start to see the full picture and you start to care about your neighbors. And I got some great parenting advice. And I think all these lines of us versus them, we're just missing each other's stories. But when we show up together, we really are creating the kingdom of God. And so I just get honest with yourself. Like, I got honest. I'm like, if you don't know anyone's name, you are certainly not loving them. Yeah. They can't feel loved. And so that just kind of kept happening where you show up and you start to know people's names. Then you start to hear like, well, how is it? And why is it like that? And then we actually get to be part of building these new relationships between people who are separated. Because we're born into a lot of different camps.
Yeah. I think, a lot of people can go on the other side where it's like, Diana, there's so much wrong. I don't even know where to begin. Like, I felt like I was feeling that way last summer with the culmination of all the things that happened with George Floyd and all the things that was going on with politics and all the things that was going on with COVID and all the things that's going on with immigration, all the things. And it's like, I don't even know, like, where am I supposed to go? Like, who am I, like, how can I make any impact? And then we get frozen. Yeah. How do you help people? Like, what are people supposed to do? How do we take a step?
Yeah, so I think that it is way simpler than we think it is. So I created a little bit of a map. I call it my Waging Peace Map, and it's just 4 steps, and you write your name on it, you put it on the fridge, and you just start. Because I truly believe that our beginnings are our finish lines. There can never be a finish line if you don't begin. And I am teaching a workshop here tomorrow night, maybe if you're around, DJ, but so the first thing is I tell people just find the erased stories in your community. So you'll find one thing, and I always say start with the people that Jesus pointed us towards. So those are the homeless, the hungry, the incarcerated, widows and orphans. Yeah. Start there, because all things intersect there. Actually, like, people tend to, if they're homeless, they've experienced violence, and all these things kind of connect. So so I have this little 4-step thing. It's on my website. It's free. I teach it. I want people to do it. Why? Because I believe that there's a better story. So long story short, you kind of see one thing that is there, and then you pick one way to show up for that. So in my city, there's a lot of things I show up for, but one of them that I'm committed to is people who are unsheltered. So I show up with a meal once a week, and I be part of that community. And I'm going to do that till every person in my city has shelter, because I believe that that's the kingdom of God. Like, I believe in heaven, like, nobody's unsheltered. So I'm going to do that, and it's super simple. So I make tacos on Tuesday, which is like a non-cooking meal. You don't really have to be a cook, but it is my commitment to show up and serve the people who are serving the homeless community and build relationship with people, because relationship is what changes us.
Right.
And so I'm going to keep doing that until every single person is sheltered, because I think that is dignity. That's so cool. And that is like the best thing I think is possible. And I think God's got wild plans for our cities. So I'm going to keep doing that until everybody is sheltered or I die. But if I died tomorrow, I would never regret showing up for that. So I think lifetime commitments make it pretty simple, because then you don't have to be worried about everything in your city, but you do show up for one thing. And once you do, then you start to learn more, and then people start calling you up for like, hey, can you bring some tables? Yes, I can do that. Or like, hey, we're having the birthday party. And when communities like invite you to celebrate, then you know that you've built some like real relationship. And I think that that's how we change things. So you don't have to get frozen by every issue, but you do have to choose one, and you have to show up. And I think that's what really transforms us from kind of like frozen in the headlights or hearers of God's will, but not doers. So and then like we live into the next reality. You know what I mean? You can't just sit and like hashtag yourself to death. Like, human beings are so much more fun, and I think that God's put it in us to actually experience stuff together, and it'll change generations. So you committing to show up for one thing in your community will change your family and your friends, because now these people matter, and now your friends have to deal with the fact that you care. And I think generationally we're going to see the things we want to see happen. And our kids are going to be proud of us that we didn't keep pushing off the things that God has asked us to care about to somebody else, or a different, you know what I mean? Well, that'll get fixed someday. It's like, no, like, I think God's asked us to like co-create with him, to partner in kingdom making. And like, that's going to be where we get to live the best.
So I have a follow-up question to that. But before I do, I think you mentioned a website. Yeah. What is your website so people can find that?
It is dianaoestreich.com, which is tricky spelling. So you'll put it in the show notes. Okay.
You hear that, Spencer? You're gonna put it in there. Cool.
And I also just started. It's called the Waging Peace Project, and it's exactly what you said, DJ. Of like, how can we take like a kindergarten class to a book club, to a church, to a civic group? Like, they are the people that God's put in their community to actually grow the kingdom. So like, how do we do that? And then I just come and do the workshop, and it's a 4-step process. And I think people want to know that they get to be part of the good. Like, we get really sad and hopeless when we don't feel like change is possible, and we get despairing. And so I think the Waging Peace Project is a thing that just says, like, God has put you in your community for a time such as this.
Wow.
And that is hopeful.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good.
Yeah. And my follow-up maybe comment, question, fill in the blank, I don't know, is like, I've heard so much talk too about like, we want to see the world change, but the way we're going to do it is through politics and getting the right people in power. What would you say? I mean, you're talking about that's like macro. You're talking like micro, I'm going to do this personally, and it's not going to solve all of homelessness by myself, but I'm going to do it until I die. And I think that's really awesome. But what is there also value in the political side of things too? I'm not trying to get into politics, but I think sometimes that's where we stop. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like we often stop at like, I'm going to get the right people that I consider to be the right people in power so that they can make the changes. And then that's kind of my duty done.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a both and.
Yeah.
I think we need to be tithing our time to the community, not just your church's ministry. Because guess what? The community knows churches care about their own stuff. What they are unsure about is if people in the church actually care about what's hurting them. Their community.
Yeah.
So I think have that local commitment and then also national and global. I think it's definitely both and, because I'm really glad that people elected officials to allow women to vote. Really glad they did that work and they didn't just be, well, just pray about it. It's like, no, I think that we really can create societies that honor people's dignity. And I think that we can't look away from that. So, like, more of that. And politics is part of the power we've been given to do that. So I think that we should do that. And you should also be putting your money where your mouth is. Like, there's this part, my favorite part in the Bible is Luke 6, where Jesus kind of lays down. He's just like, hey, to you who are ready to hear the truth, I tell you, love your enemies. And then he kind of says it again. And then a paragraph later, he's like, hey, why are you just nodding at me in Bible studies, but you're not actually doing it? And I was like, whoa, that's pretty. He's like calling it out here, I'm feeling it.
Yeah.
And then he ends with saying that these are not merely additions to your faith, but loving your enemies. This is foundational. And he ends with the parable of the builder who built his house on the sand.
Yeah.
So I think there's a power of change, of honoring people that we see as our enemies, like in our communities and politically and globally. Like when you see somebody actually care about someone who's different than them, like you feel it. You're like, that is not normal. What are those people doing?
Yeah.
Well, it only points back to the supernatural love of God that is boundless and for us, that has the rain fall on the righteous and the non.
Yeah.
And so I think we absolutely need to be doing that politically, nationally, globally, and locally. And I don't even think it's that hard. I think we've just been told that we can't do it and we're too little. And like, I don't believe it.
Yeah.
Because all the great changes have come from a very small group of people who have not just said the name of Jesus, but like lived out the posture of Jesus.
Yeah.
I think we can do it.
Yeah.
Thank you for believing in us. Because we need someone to.
Yeah, for sure.
So how has this, you talk about your family, a beautiful family, and how have they kind of taken on, obviously this is like probably a family journey for you. So how have you guys as a family, like, how has it been, through your journey of transitioning and trying to transforming your mind, renewing your mind, and then also kind of raising two boys inside of this world? So how has it been? How do you do it?
The last 4 years have been really hard. And if you read my book, you'll see the photos of these cute little elementary schoolers, because that's the ages that they were when we really started showing up for the first time to these marches or to these vigils, so I think that the greatest thing is that when I had come back from war and just trying to heal and figure things out, I had these two little boys who were like, what's war, mama? What's a gun? Did you use one? And I think that, a lot of parents can be like, I don't know, honey, but like, I did know. And so I think that God did a lot of healing where if I could explain it to my sons, and if I could give my sons what I most wanted to give them in the world, that was me figuring out what this was. And so I always told my sons, I said, there's no such thing as good people and bad people. I'm like, God created every person, but we do have actions, and every day I'm like, you're gonna think of little kids who like to hit each other with sticks, okay? And so I was like, so every day, like, you have to decide whether you are gonna use your hands to break someone's world in half, or you're going to use your hands to build someone up.
That's so good.
So
That is so
early,
good.
so early on, we took away this us versus them. They're like, good guy, bad guys, kill them, good guys, us. Like we pointed out that like God made people good. God loves us.
Yeah.
But your actions, those are yours. And you have to be accountable to what you do with your actions. And so I think that always allowed them never to like throw someone under the bus.
Yeah.
They'd be like, well, that kid did that. I'm like, yep, that's his action. That's not who he is. And then one of them like, hauled off and hit the other one. And I remember hearing, because we're no longer going to do that old war mentality. So I heard my husband being like, why can't you hit your brother? And this little snivelly, older brother is like, because it's wrong. And he's like, no, because he is God's son first.
Yeah.
He's God's son first. So like, you don't get to hit him,
Yeah.
And so just rearranging how we relate to each other, changed my family. And so the decisions weren't easy, but I also know that arming them with love to go out into this crazy world, that is a freedom that not many people have. And I'm
Yeah.
like, that is your faith in action. That says that like, you don't have to hurt somebody when you're mad or when you're right. And that is submitting to God in a way that you won't see. And so, and I am raising my black son to know his worth in this world, and I'm raising my white son to work for justice, because these two things are connected.
Yeah.
Like we're not one or the other. Like
Yeah.
we have this this fullness that has to be worked out and made right, and we got to be truthful about it. So right
Yeah.
now they're like 12
Yeah.
and 13, so like teenagers who take no BS, So like trying to explain to them why the adults are doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
That'll put you on it. But I also think that they have this, like, it's really normal that when violence happens or in the community, it's really normal for them. They're like, oh, we're going to show up in the candles, right, Mom? And I was
Yeah.
like, yeah.
Yeah.
So because we've been doing it since they were young, they see that if something bad happens, we don't have to be sad at home about it. We show up as a community, and then they always sing, I don't know why Amazing Grace happens at like every vigil I've
Yeah.
been, and we light candles, and everybody walks away knowing that the light is greater than the darkness.
Yeah.
And so I think that it's not easy, but raising them to be peacemakers and to show up has only given them more security that, yeah, bad things happen in the world, but I don't got to be scared about that. It will always happen because I know that we're going to show up with love. We're going to show up to sing together. We're going to show up and say that we want to build a better community where this violence doesn't happen to anybody's kids.
Wow. It's incredible.
So lots of long talks.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems
but
like
also
it.
just lots of committing to showing up and not, you have to admit when things aren't right. If you can do that, then you can say, what does God want to right this, and how do we get to be part of it together?
Yeah.
But if you just act like it's okay, that's not helping anybody.
Right. Or even like, I think sometimes we want to hide our kids
Oh yeah.
from it. And then I guess what happens, they end up becoming 12 and 13, and they're being told it from all other places. So I love how you guys have said, hey, we're going to walk them through this while they're young. And I'm pretty sure there's challenges ahead because teenagers, they're not fun. So all the time.
Pray for me. Pray for me.
We're going to be praying for you. But I love that how they say, hey, this is the thing that we're going to be purposeful about and have a part of our family and the ministry that you guys are doing together. I think that's really inspiring. When I read that comment that your husband made about how you can't hit your brother because it's God's son, I was like, oh, I'm gonna use that. I used that yesterday. So
Use it.
That's great.
that's just such a good thing. Just a good perspective of why, like, man, we have to treat people well. We have to treat them well because God created them. They're created in His image. So when we are drawing a line in the sand, we're saying that, hey, like, I'm on the right side and that person is not worthy of what God has for them. Or like, I think the worst part about it is like I'm removing myself from the opportunity to be with God in whatever redemption, transformation, or him giving me a perspective that I never would have had before. And we rob ourselves of the life that's truly life. And I think that's the one thing that I felt like you have really found through your journey. Is like, man, this is actually more full as I kind of move towards people. And our culture kind of tells us we need to move away from people.
Yeah, our culture tells us that people are dangerous. We got to protect ourselves. And there's this thing that I realized when I met Hassan, who's in the book, but she was this catalyst who really dared me to believe that I had something extravagant to give instead of something priceless to protect. And I think right now our culture's dukes are up and we're all like, protect, protect, protect. But I think that God has given us this abundance. Like he has said we have life without ceasing. We have all the love on the planet. Like there's nothing he will not give us. So like, shouldn't we be the people throwing it around like confetti? Yeah. Being like, I got
Amen.
you. Like, you
Amen.
don't have to be nice to me. I'll forgive you. Why? Because I've been given this incredible love, and I'm just going to pass it on.
Yeah.
Like, that's my vision for the next generation and for my kids is, like, we're going to be the most ridiculously generous, forgiving, merciful people that people are like, I cannot offend a Christian. Like, they just won't do it.
Yeah. I love that visual of throwing it around like confetti. That's awesome. Just a box of confetti. I'm gonna carry a box of confetti around with me.
I love you.
You wronged me. Yeah, it's cool. Confetti. I think that's awesome. I love it. There's something we're coming to the end of the podcast, but there's something really profound at the beginning of your book that I just really am curious about, and I want to hear more about it. You said something along the lines of that if you told the same stories like 20 years from now, that you might tell it a different way, because as humans, we're always changing and growing and becoming new people every day, or we should be. That's kind of how the Bible shows us how to do it. Can you talk a little bit more about what you mean by that and and all of that? I would love to hear more.
Yeah, I think that this was one of the hardest things about being honest in writing a book about, I'm writing about who I was when I was 23. And amen to the good Lord, I'm 41 today. And I'm grateful for that. So who I am today isn't who I was, back then, 17 years ago, but I'm not going to shine it up. And I'm going to act like I was better than I was, even though I am horrified about the things that I did and I said and I thought when I was 23. And so I think that is a little bit of what I'm saying there, is that I think it's okay that we be brutally honest about our growth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not everybody, and I think especially as Christians, we should always be growing. So what we thought at 20, please God, make it be different at 40. You know what I mean? Like, there is more for us. So I think when I wrote this, I had to be brutally honest about the things that I'm not proud of. Actually hurts me that I took so little care for a lot of people in the world. Didn't care about them. But I had to be honest about that. And then at the same time, I'm writing about a snippet of time, and that's not where I stayed either. But you can't put a little addendum on a book that says, hey, don't nail me to the wall because I've grown. So I think there's this humility, and if I can give myself an honesty and a humility that says, that's who I was, and guess what? God still loved me, and did I think a lot of stuff that was pretty harmful? Sure, but if I can honor the dignity of the Diana of 23 years old, then I can honor your dignity of the person that you were when you were 23. Like, we don't have to, brutalize each other's. We can hold the value that says I was just as loved them then when I thought XYZ as I am today, because God's goodness and his love of us is unconditional and unchanged. And it is a humiliating thing to accept that, to say, man, I can't do anything to make God love me more, and I'm not going to hide it from people, from their judgment, from their criticism. And because I don't sit in a camp, I get double judgment criticism from every camp, because they're like, but you're not here, so now that. So I feel like I love that in 20 years, there will probably be even more that I can see in this story that God's writing. And if I continue to move past what's comfortable and love people that I don't already know about and don't care about, because that's a truth teller, that there are people that I'm not super concerned about, but I want to be, I want to, then I'll probably tell that story differently. And if I would have told this story 17 years ago, I would have not seen a lot. So I think that we can honor each other's places and not try to destroy each other's progress by being so horrified. I'm like, it's normal to learn and change your mind and grow, and I don't have to dishonor the person I used to be or the people that taught me that in order to grow. I can honor both.
Wow.
Yeah. That's good.
Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for being with us here today on the podcast. I really am praying and hoping that this is helpful for many people in their journeys as it's been helpful in mine. It's such an amazing opportunity to be able to meet you and to hear from you and just have this conversation. So honored for you to be here. This is the Beyond the Lines podcast. We record out of Central Christian Church in Arizona. You can check us out at centralaz.com anytime you want to. So thank you for being a part of this podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for
Learned
having
so
me.
much. Yeah. Thank you.
And if you like this podcast, give us a rating on Apple. That'd be cool. Apple Podcast.